My name is Candace Hextall, and I am your co-host for today. I am also the manager for the virtual career-aligned English as a Second Language program for the Office of New Americans through the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. So I'm really excited about this new initiative and really appreciate your time today. I have a very special co-host with me today, and together we hope that you will come away from this session excited and ready to help new Americans here in the state of Colorado. But before we begin, I always like to start off with a quote that is extremely meaningful to me and the immensely important work that I and my colleagues do here at the Office of New Americans. As this quote reminds us, we are a nation of immigrants. And while our backgrounds are extremely varied and diverse, I do believe it's safe to say that we are all here to live a better life. Now, first, I'd like to very briefly go over today's agenda. We will first have our introductions, and then we will move on to discuss the VCESL program and what it entails and the program's purpose and goals. I will then introduce you to EnGen, one of our phenomenal vendors who's providing English language courses to new Americans. And then we'll briefly touch on the partnerships for the program, in addition to eligibility criteria, frequently asked questions, and ways to contact us if you would like to partner with the Office of New Americans. If there is time, we will make sure to make our Q&A session document available to you so that you may ask us any questions and we will get back to you very, very quickly. And again, I just wanted to say that before that starts, we know that you'll have questions for us throughout the session, but we also want to make sure that everyone's question gets answered, even if we run out of time during that particular session, which was why we created the Q&A session Google Doc that you see here on your screen to capture all of your great questions. Now, if you are watching this recording, we will send this link to this document to you via email. And you are more than welcome to drop any and all questions for us in that particular document. So just make sure that you please put your name and email address and your question in the correct column. So if your question is for me and the Office of New Americans, just make sure you drop it in the column that says ONA, Office of New Americans. Now, if you have a question for EnGen, please drop it in the column that says EnGen, and we will do our best to address all of your questions as possible. So we will make sure to reach out to all individuals with their questions. So you will have access to this particular document. And then after about a week's time, this document will be taken down, but we will make sure to reach out to you if you have any questions. Okay, so I would first like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Candace Hextall. I am the VCESL Program Manager for the Office of New Americans. My entire background and career is deeply embedded in education and advocacy for English language learners. I taught English language development for 12 years in North Carolina, my home state, and here in the state of Colorado, and I have worked with English learners and new Americans for the better part of 20 years. I am currently assisting with the resettlement efforts here in the state of Colorado for our newly arrived immigrant and refugee populations, and directly supported newcomer students as they transitioned to the Denver Public Schools District when I served as the newcomer specialist at Central Office. So now I am absolutely thrilled to transition to helping our adult language learners, as I am a staunch advocate for providing greater access and opportunities to our new Americans, as well as removing barriers and obstacles to their success. So now I will let my co-host introduce herself. So I'll turn it over to Guadalupe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Guadalupe Corrales, and I am one of the customer success managers here at EnGen. When I first started at EnGen, I was a coach, so I was working directly with the learners, and that gave me great insight around, some of the barriers that our learners face when trying to learn a new language and how we can best support them and their engagement in the platform so that they can be successful in obtaining those English goals that they have. I have a background in working with young adults who have faced many barriers, especially also, including new Americans as well, and their families. So helping them find the right resources in order to be successful, and our young adults that have come in contact with the justice system in order to prevent them from ever going back and kind of redirecting their lives. And I am passionate about, anything social justice, transforming systems, and helping new Americans and underrepresented populations.
Thank you so much for co-hosting with me today, Guadalupe. I really appreciate that. So, what is the VCESL program exactly? Well, I'll have to backtrack just a little bit to June of 2022. So the passing of Senate Bill 22140 in June of last year tasked the Office of New Americans to establish this virtual career-aligned ESL program to help ensure that our English language learners here in the state of Colorado have access to high-quality work-based learning, job training, and employment opportunities. The VCESL program also supports and assists employers and other workforce stakeholders and other partners to recruit, serve, hire, and promote English language learners here in the state. Now, this support could show up in a myriad of ways. It could be in the form of understanding and recognizing and acknowledging the endless potential that new Americans bring to the table, in addition to helping employers and workforce development centers to better understand and utilize the sheer amount of skills and talents that our internationally trained professionals already possess. It could also show up in the form as our vendors providing career and sector-specific webinars that helps employers to think more deeply about how to serve incumbent and frontline workers, along with helping them to just utilize best practices in marketing to and recruiting talented individuals for their specific industries. But basically, in a nutshell, the VCESL program provides career and sector-specific adult English language courses via English learning digital platforms, which helps new Americans to build the skills that they need and will need in order to navigate and access our state's growing workforce. So let's say, for example, there is a new American who has a background in the medical field, and they would like to learn how to become a registered nurse or a certified nursing assistant. They could take career-specific courses that would help to build their skills and give them the career-specific technical terminology that they would need in order to access the nursing field. Or maybe there is a new American who would like to learn more about engineering. Our vendors have courses that are specifically tailored to help new Americans to successfully access that specific English that they would need in order to be able to access and enter the engineering field. Now, these are just a couple of examples here, but the point that I would like to make is that new Americans already come with endless talent, skills, and abilities, but it's up to us to determine how to successfully tap into that. So now I want to very briefly talk about the VCESL program's purpose and goals. We have about 3, and we want to make sure that we are effectively providing new Americans with the specific tools to access and plug into sector-specific industries. We also want to help our new Americans, especially in those areas where ESL classes and courses may not be as easily accessible, by giving them greater access to digital platforms that will truly help them to enter Colorado's workforce. And we also want to upskill, reskill, and expand the talent pool of employees in these high demand sectors. So we're doing a lot of good stuff with this particular program. And we are working with two specific, vendors who will be providing their English language digital platforms to the VCESL program. But today, I would like to highlight one of our incredible vendors who is positively impacting the lives of our immigrant and refugee population. And that vendor is EnGen. Now, EnGen is an online and mobile industry-focused English language learning platform with scalable and accessible adult ESL instruction to accelerate career pathways for English language learner job seekers, students, and incumbent workers. Now, EnGen's fabulous, but EnGen is a certified B Corporation that delivers personalized, contextualized, mobile-first English language upskilling to immigrants, refugees, and speakers of other languages across the United States. And the great thing about EnGen is that they have already served over 4 million English language learners since 2012. And in addition to that, EnGen is working very closely with the Office of New Americans to create and build additional career-aligned pathway courses that use real-world content. the VCESL program is actually one of the first of its kind in the entire nation. So we are really excited to start this program and to get more learners enrolled. So now I'm going to turn it over to Guadalupe.
Thank you, Candace. I think you pretty much summarized this slide for me, but I just wanted to briefly share our mission. So as Candace mentioned, we want to be able to remove, those barriers for immigrants, refugees, and speakers of other languages to unlock opportunities for economic and social mobility. If we can empower incumbent workers and English learners, they have an opportunity to, grow in their workforce and also, have better stability and economic mobility. And so what EnGen does a really good job of doing is allowing learners to personalize their platform. And so they're able to sit back and think about, what are my goals? What is it that I am trying to obtain? How can my English help me? And so the platform allows them to do just that, to personalize their learning. It's an easy to run platform, so they're able to access the platform from their computers, tablets, mobile device, whatever is accessible to them, so that there aren't barriers for them to learn English. It is career-specific instruction. So again, when we talk to these learners or when thinking about how can we best support English language learners, thinking about, what careers are they in? What careers would they like to navigate towards? Where do we fill those gaps? And so giving them the content that they need to grow in those areas, real world content. And so the content that we pull from in order to create these lessons for the learners are tied to real world scenarios, so that learners are not just learning the vocabulary, but how to use it in the context of which they would be, working or going back to school in, or whatever that goal is for the learner. And the administrators or those who are offering this program to their learners or to their workers or to whoever it might be, they're able to gain access or insight on what exactly the learners are doing in the platform. So they're able to see the performance, how engaged are the learners, maybe who's needing additional support, what are they learning in the platform, are they actually understanding the content of the platform. And so through the platform, our partners are able to see the performance of learners, but learners are also able to get an insight on how they're doing in the platform and advancing in their English language learning, because they have access to that as well. Next slide, please. So one of the important things that is becoming evident here in the state of Colorado is that in order to be able to help our immigrants and refugees, we have to be able to provide them training and support. And as you all know, English skills are necessary, and they're one of the biggest barriers that they face in order to successfully integrate and access some of those high demand jobs and jobs that will give them living wages. So in order to be able to provide the support and provide them the skills that are necessary for them to upskill and reskill, employers need to think about how they can, attract and retain talent. And so by providing English as one of the things that, as a benefit for these learners in the workforce, it really helps towards, keeping employees, because they know that their employers are investing in them and want to see them grow in the company, or even say I want to provide this English language learning for you because I know that you have potential to obtain whatever goal it is that you have for yourself. Next slide, please. So traditional ESL programs currently do not meet the needs of working adults. So as you know, some of them rely on outdated and ineffective curricula. So oftentimes, learners are, spending years in these classes, and then they don't know how to apply what they're learning. Maybe they haven't built the courage to be able to speak. They might have the knowledge, but they don't know how to put it into practice. And then there are also significant barriers to the participation. A lot of times, these facilities are far from where they live, or they have to find childcare in order to attend classes in person. Sometimes they don't have someone who can take them to the classes. And if they're working multiple jobs in order, to put a roof over their heads of their families, then they're not able to participate in these classes. So with EnGen being a virtual platform, they're able to essentially get into the platform whenever they're available, whatever day of the week, at any time, so they can go in there and learn and not have this be a barrier to them. And right now, we have a shortage. As a country, the US only meets the needs of 4% of adult 4% of adult English language learners. So, again, by taking away these barriers and allowing learners to use a platform where they can go in there and know that it's going to be personalized to what their needs are, and they can go in there and learn when they have time. It takes some of that additional stress off their shoulders of like, how can I find childcare? Who's going to take me? And, I can't work 2 jobs because now I have to learn English. So, keeping all these things in mind when offering English language learning to new Americans. Next slide, please. So I think this is a really great image just of kind of putting together what I've been mentioning. So, we have our immigrants, refugees, or speakers of other languages in these entry-level roles. And so what we want to do is provide them ongoing coaching and support so that we can upskill them, reskill them, and help them and retain them in our jobs, and also prepare them for these gaps in our economy. And so when we were able to provide that to them, we can help them successfully integrate by improving their English and providing them career skills that they need in order to be successful and find that economic mobility and provide family sustainable wages, which is really important right now. And so right now, like, they might be working multiple jobs, but we can, take that away from them and say, we can help you here in this one job that you have, improve those skills that you have, or let's figure out what your goals are so we can provide you that English that you need in order to be successful. And then that also in turn helps us because, there are a lot of gaps right now in the workforce. And so how do we fill those? And we have so much talent in our new Americans. And like I said, that barrier is English. And so how do we start closing that gap? Next slide, please. So as far as how this, how the platform works and how learners receive meaningful targeted training in an environment where they can practice. So the training is tied to real workplace needs. So as I mentioned, the content that we develop, we think about, what are real scenarios? How would they actually apply this into their roles? Where they might have a conversation similar to like this in their job, or maybe where are they hearing this vocabulary, in what context? And also we try to make our lessons engaging, relevant, and motivating. So we want learners to not say, I have to come in here and learn English. They're excited and say, well, I could see how this relates to what I'm currently doing. And so now I'm motivated to want to come in here and learn English. And they can also leverage training during authentic experiences. Again, we tie this to similar scenarios of what they might face in their current working role or the role that they would like to obtain. Their performance is tracked for evaluation. So all employers can go in there and check the progress of their learners to provide that additional support that is needed, especially when learning a new language could be challenging. And so learners don't just want to feel like, well, what's going to come out of this? Is it going to matter that I learn English? And so when they feel supported, and we give you all the access to do that, it really makes a difference in learners. And so with all of this put in place, they can actually develop those skills that they need, not only to comprehend, but also to be able to speak and be successful using, this new vocabulary that they're learning, and in these new roles as well. Next slide, please. So how does this work? How do we start? And so what we do is we begin with the needs analysis. So all learners who activate their accounts at EnGen will automatically be taken to this needs analysis. And here are just a few of the questions that they're asked to answer. And this kind of helps us understand, where do you currently stand? How do you feel about your English? What are your goals? And so it gives them the opportunity to, analyze how they feel about themselves as far as English goes, what level of English they feel that they have. And then in turn, the platform is able to personalize that depending on how they're able to answer these questions about themselves. Next slide, please. So here's just an example of kind of how our lessons work. So as you can see here, we have audios and videos that learners are able to play that relate to whatever content it is that they've picked. And so this allows them to start training their ears so they can start getting familiar with the vocabulary being used in their specific area of industry. And then it'll ask them questions around the context of the conversation or the scenario that they just watched. And each lesson that they complete is going to have keywords that are important for them to know from that specific lesson. But again, they all relate to that specific industry that they've picked. So for example, here, if this is cross-contamination, they're going to watch a video that has to do with that. It's going to ask a question around the context of what was shown or talked about in that audio. And then these words are pulled from that audio that are important, that are used in that specific industry, like cross-contaminate, cutting board, handling. So that way learners are not only understanding the context and how to use these words in those conversations, but they also have a space for them to come back to and continue to reinforce those words and see where they've heard them before, so they can start putting them into practice as well. Next slide, please. So how do we get started? So one of the things that we do is we work with our partners to identify who would benefit from English skills. So from your company, and you're like, this is interesting, I think this would work. We start with trying to just think about that, who would benefit, how do you identify those learners? How do you offer this to them? And then we identify, after we've decided, okay, these learners would greatly benefit, this is how we're going to roll it out. We identify someone who can kind of take the lead on this project at the company and say, I can be the champion. I could be the one that kind of checks the progress of the learners, motivates them, provides that additional support, directs them to whoever can answer their questions. Because like I said, that support piece is really important. We decide when we want to do the training. And so we talk about, giving you all the resources and tools that you need in order to help your learners. And so we decide around when can the training happen to provide you all with that help. And then we ensure that the employees have access to mobile devices and our computers, because this is a virtual platform. We want to set them up for success. And with that being said, they need internet access. So do they have the ability to log into the platform? And if they don't, are there ways we can kind of work around that? Like, does the company have like a staff lounge, or maybe there's a library around there that we can send them to? And then also determining the metrics for measuring success. So like, what is important for you as a company? Do you want to improve their performance and morale? Do you want to recruit or retain your employees more? The employee benefit usage, promotions, like what is the purpose behind offering this platform to your learners? So that, they don't feel like, well, why am I doing this for? And if they do come to you or they're struggling, you can remember, this is why we're doing this and this is how I want to help you. So you want to have an answer for them when things start to get challenging and they're learning a new language. Next slide, please.
May I jump in real quick?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Because one of the best things that I love about EnGen, about this particular program, in terms of making sure that employers understand all of the benefits to the program, but also understanding all of the steps that are necessary to actually implementing a program like this in their particular place of business, is that once they have that champion, once they have someone who is going to support the employees, at the business, not only can they, provide that level of support to them, but they can also help to retain that talent. And so I know that, and I understand that, retaining talent is a massive challenge nationwide. So it only makes sense, and it's kind of a no-brainer, to have a program such as this in these places of business, so that employees not only, feel supported while they're learning the language and they're learning it on the job, but also understanding that, hey, I can see that this manager or this director or, this HR manager supports me and other English learners like myself. So I'm going to bring more people to this business because I know that they support us. And I think that word of mouth and just having that example can just go miles and miles in terms of, actually supporting individuals. And it just goes so far to, just create that atmosphere of support and welcoming. And it really helps with the whole DEI aspect of making sure that we are recruiting diverse talent, which is massively important also in our country. So back to you, Guadalupe. Sorry.
I think that ties in perfect with what you just said, because here are just some metrics that I wanted to share with you all. So 87% of EnGen learners report achieving a major career or social goal, including pay raises, promotions, and access to further training, which is ultimately what we want to do. It's, as Candace mentioned, sometimes it's expensive to have, people leaving and then hiring new people and having to retrain them. So if we're able to just, work with the talent that we currently have and figure out what are those barriers and how can we get them to overcome the barriers for promotions, raises, giving them new opportunities, they're going to stay and then talk about like, hey, my company really supports me. 89% of EnGen learners report being more likely to stay at their current companies because of an English benefit. And so I think oftentimes, when we're thinking about like, how do we retain employees, something simple like investing in your employees around like, how can we help, upskill you, reskill you, think about your goals and, fill in those gaps so that you're successful in whatever it is that you need. They're going to stay just even for that reason. And then 60% of EnGen learners report improving at least one English proficiency level. So again, EnGen is working, learners who take the time to study and go in there, see an improvement in their English. And so it's not just learners go in there and say, well, what now? They actually feel the difference and they can report on that to us as well. And here are just some examples as well of some of our current EnGen learners and some of the quotes that they have for us, if you would like to read those. Next slide, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. So now we're going to very briefly talk about our partnerships that we currently have through the VCESL program. And as this program continues to enroll new learners every single day, and it is true, we are enrolling people every single day, we are excited to partner with these various employers, businesses, institutions of higher education, public library systems, career centers and workforce development centers, in addition to our immensely vital immigrant serving and community-based and nonprofit organizations. We have so many partners. I couldn't put them all on the slide. It would take up a lot of slides. So I just wanted to say that we know that by working together, we can help new Americans to get the services they need in order to successfully enter Colorado's workforce. And it really is a massive group effort. It's never just one person or one organization doing all of the work. It's literally all of these people that you see on the screen working together. So now I want to talk about our eligibility criteria and our frequently asked questions that I typically receive about this program. But because I am, like I said, a staunch advocate of removing barriers to individuals' access, we only have 3 eligibility criteria to participate here in the VCESL program. So individuals must be 18 years of age or older. They must be a resident of the state of Colorado, meaning that they could have moved here yesterday. Congratulations, they are now a resident. And they must be an English language learner. We do not require any paperwork or documentation to prove any of this. It's really easy to determine if someone is an English learner. Ask them what their first language is and if they want to learn English. It's pretty straightforward. But the eligibility criteria, that's it. Because we understand that for many other programs, and understandably so, there may be other barriers to access. And we just wanted to make sure that we removed those barriers in order to make this program as accessible as possible for new Americans. And there are several frequently asked questions that I receive fairly often about the VCESL program, and I wanted to highlight 3 really important ones that I always receive. The first important piece of information is that this entire program is of no cost to participants or partners of this program. The funding for this program came from the actual Senate bill legislation that was passed in June of last year. So this entire program is free. And usually when people hear that, they think that it's too good to be true. And I'm just here to say it's not. This is a program meant to genuinely benefit our population, our new American population. So it is free. No one ever has to worry about paying for any of this ever. I also get the question as to whether or not this program is offered only in the Denver metro area. And I am always happy to say, nope. This program is offered statewide. We are the Colorado Office of New Americans, not the Denver Office of New Americans. So this program is offered statewide to ensure that every eligible individual who would benefit from the program will receive an equal chance to do so, contingent upon sufficient funding. And then, as Guadalupe mentioned, all of the courses are offered, and they are offered and are 100% accessible on any working mobile device. So again, like she said, this includes laptops, tablets, cell phones, any type of working mobile device. They just have to have working internet in order to access it. So the great thing about that is that it increases the portability and the flexibility and the ease with which learners can actually take these classes, giving them greater agency and autonomy over their own learning. Because just like Guadalupe said, sometimes these facilities where these ESL courses are being held are way too far, or maybe they're held on a day or at an hour, on a day when they're working. Say, for example, you have someone who's working at like the meat packing plant in the northeastern region of the state, and they work 6 days a week. Well, if there's a class that's offered on a Tuesday morning at 9:00, well, how are they going to get there? They can't. So the great thing about this program is that they are able to access this on their own time. So on their day off, if they have maybe an hour to spare, they can do that. They can access these classes on their own time, on their own schedule. So that way they're able to learn, but then they'll be more encouraged to do so because they don't have to worry about, having to, deal with the restriction of only going to one place or only being able to attend a class at a certain time. They can do it at their own time. And so if you are interested in learning more about the program, you can use your mobile device to scan the QR code that you see here on your screen, or you can type in the web address that you see here on the screen, and this will take you to the Google interest form that you see here in the middle of your screen. This takes literally less than 3 minutes to complete, but it gives us your contact information so that we may reach back out to you in case you are interested in partnering with our program. And if you would like to contact me, please reach out to me at Candace. I always have to spell it, CANDACE.Hextall, HECKSTALL @state.co.us. And again, you can scan the QR code that you see here on your screen. That will take you to the Google interest form. And you may reach out to me Monday through Friday from 7:30 until 4. And just to recap really, really quickly, this program is available to eligible new Americans. The eligibility criteria, there's just 3: 18 years of age or older. They have to be a resident of Colorado, and they have to be an English learner. And there is no cost. There's no cost to participants or to partners of ONA. And one last thing that I wanted to add, because I think this is really important for small to mid-sized employers and businesses, but also to larger businesses as well. Another initiative that the Office of New Americans has developed to support employers and workforce integration and advancement of new Americans is a brand new 3-part webinar series that is called Working with New Americans, From Recruiting to Upskilling. Now, this webinar series was developed by my colleague, our Global Talent Administrator, Anthony Trewinski. And so in the coming weeks, each of these 3 episodes will be uploaded and freely accessible via the Office of New Americans website, and will be accompanied by lists of best practices and action steps that can be taken by employers per topic. So as you can see here on the screen, the topics covered include recruiting, onboarding, applications, managing, interviewing, and upskilling. Now, the intention with this particular series is to provide employers with as much information as possible to prepare them to implement the steps that will positively shift their DEI strategies and ultimately impact their bottom line. So just want to do a really quick shout out to my colleague because he worked very, very hard on this webinar series, and I'm very impressed with what he was able to do. And this would normally be the Q&A session time. So individuals who want to ask their questions, they can put that there in the document. The link is actually here on the screen, even though it is kind of hard to see. But I can also email this to everyone as well. And that concludes our session. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited for our partnership and to be able to positively impact the lives of new Americans here in the state of Colorado. And we know that with your help, we will only strengthen Colorado's incredible pool of talented workers. So again, this session is recorded, so please be on the lookout for the replay link that will be sent out to you very soon. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Candace and Guadalupe. I actually do have a couple questions since we have the time. One thing was, it sounds like the program is tailored for specific industries. Is there a list of like what type of industries you've kind of already created programs for, or if a business or employer is in an industry that's kind of not represented, how would that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And Guadalupe can speak a little bit more to this. I do know that it is tailored for all industries. We are making sure that much of the programs are in those, really hard to fill industries, or those high demand industries like nursing, early childhood education, forestry, law enforcement, engineering and construction, manufacturing as well. Those aren't the only ones, but I know that Guadalupe can speak to the extensive course list that EnGen has.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and put in the chat a link to our course catalog so you're able to see like the breakdown of the industries and the content that we have under each, category. But what I would say is that, as Candace mentioned, I think for the most part, we have content for anyone. And it really just comes down to like thinking about like, what are the skills? Like if you don't see like, for example, let's say we didn't have healthcare content. Okay, well, let's think about what skills are needed outside of just like vocabulary that's specific to healthcare. They might need job interviewing, they might need social integration. So there's these other things that when you think about new Americans and how we can set them up for success, it's not just like the industry specific content, but all these other skills that are also necessary. And so I think when we do come across someone who's like, well, I don't necessarily see something that works for me, then we think about like, well, what other skills are needed? It's not just the obvious. There's other skills that we're probably not thinking about, but we do have tons, and we're constantly releasing content every month. So if for whatever reason we notice that there are gaps, like we're quick to address that and figure out how to create some content around that.
Great. And you mentioned like for that needs analysis that the employee or the learner can talk about what they're really looking for. Is there an opportunity for the employer to kind of say like what would make the employee successful, or what things for their particular employees to focus on?
Yeah. So when we, identify someone who's interested and they're like, I'm interested in partnering, how can this work for me? We kind of go down and we just have that conversation. We talk about like, okay, who do you serve? Like, who works for you? What are the skills that they have? Like, what gaps are you trying to fill? What do you feel like your learners need? And so we're also able to personalize the platform to fit the needs of the employer. So if the employer is like, well, my workers would really benefit from these courses, is there a way for us to just have them take that? There is a way. And so what I do is I work with our partners to determine, okay, like what courses stand out to you? And, and so then we determine courses that fit at each level of learner, from beginner all the way to advanced. And so we'll auto assign content so that when learners activate their account and they complete that needs analysis, they'll still be given the content that the employer wants them to take. But it's still helpful for us to have their input, because once they've completed that content, since they do have access to the platform for 6 months, then they have the flexibility of like, I've done what my employer wants me to do, but now there's still things in the catalog that I found really interesting that align with the goals that I mentioned. I'm going to look into that and take those courses, and they're able to do that.
Great. And then I guess the last question I had was just, is it mostly for kind of new English learners, or is it adapted for a full range of like, maybe people who have been here for some years and they have pretty good English, but just looking to improve in a few key areas?
Yeah, no, we have courses at every level of English, from beginner all the way to advanced. And so we have also, like, depending on the industry, we've developed courses at those different levels as well. So that way, if they're like, I'm interested in healthcare, we have beginner courses, but also, high beginner, low intermediate, and so on, for learners who do have a more advanced English that can also benefit from participating in the program.
And
Great.
Guadalupe, correct me if I'm wrong, but when learners first get into the particular program, like when they first get access into the platform, they do take a baseline assessment. Is that correct, to like officially determine their proficiency level? So that then gives them access to specific courses. Is that right?
Yeah, so after they complete their needs analysis, that's just kind of like I would say the baseline of what the
Mhm.
learner feels for themselves. Like this is what I think my English level is based on the way that they answer the questions. But we do have a proficiency assessment that they're strongly encouraged to take within the 30 days that they've enrolled in or activated their accounts. And this helps us actually get to a better understanding of like, is your level of English truly a high beginner or a beginner? Because oftentimes, they will underestimate their level of English. And so once they feel comfortable taking that proficiency assessment, they'll get their English score based on that assessment. And then that also gives them the opportunity to get access to more content because they're not able to take content that's above their English level. And so that's done so that learners don't find themselves in courses that are too advanced and they're like, this is really overwhelming. So the proficiency assessment, all learners have access to it. And it's the best way for them to really know, like, what is my English level? And then the platform can further personalize to that English level.
And then for the English learners, do they have to go through an employer or through a workforce center, or can they, as an individual job seeker, say, hey, I want to improve my English and reach out directly?
Yeah, they can absolutely reach out directly. That's the one great thing about EnGen that I love so much is that, if an employer does want to request their, a certain number of licenses for their employees to take, they can go ahead and do that. But if someone on an individual level would like to just simply enroll and do it on their own time, they can do that as well. So we have both of those options, which is amazing. I was telling Guadalupe a few months ago that I wish that when I was an educator that this platform was available to my secondary and post-secondary students, simply because this would have been the most amazing platform. And also, this platform is offered, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Guadalupe, is offered in 72 languages.
I think the number has changed, but yes, it's around 70 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that way the platform is accessible, to new Americans in a language that they understand. So when you saw on the previous slides that Guadalupe showed you regarding the dashboard for EnGen, you could see that the instructions were in Spanish, but the information, the vocabulary words and phrases were offered in English because they are learning English, but it still has to be accessible. So and learning a language is just hard. I am the crazy person who loves learning languages. I'm trying to become a polyglot. I am currently teaching myself 3 languages, Spanish, Turkish, and reteaching myself Mandarin because I used to live in China and I just wanted to get better at that. And it is hard. It is hard just trying to retain that information, then being able to converse with someone, in that language. And you're like, and so the great thing about this particular program is that individuals have that support. So as soon as they are enrolled in the program, they're not just left on their own, like, hey, peace, good luck. No. They are supported at every step of the way. So I really appreciate that fact because language learning is hard, but having that support makes it a little bit easier, to bear and deal with. So I love that. Guadalupe and her team are always there. They have one of the best customer care teams that I've ever seen. And I would pay good money to have them go everywhere I go. I think that would be great.